The Bible simply stands for basic instructions before leaving earth. That's what I call the Bible. The Bible says in Romans chapter 3, verses 10 and 23, that none is righteous, and all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. It didn't say some are righteous. It says none are righteous. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. That said, I would point out that my mother could be described as a little different, and at times conflicted. You see, she could be so clean that some could say, is it possible to be too clean? You literally could eat off her floors. She could be very opinionated, but in some ways so withdrawn. She could be funny and yet deadly serious. She could be so confident and then seem small and frightened. She had a calmness about her, but she always seemed rather nervous and fidgety, especially when I was doing something wrong. My mother was scary smart. She actually received 2 doubles before she got to high school. She should have been going into 6th grade. She was actually going into high school. But in so many things, she didn't seem to have a clue. My mother could enter a room and it seemed that she could stop time. But she could also enter a room and you barely noticed she was there. Yes, she was different. A simple person born in the middle of depression into a dysfunctional home, which led to one of the most complex individuals I have ever known. The most consistent aspect of her was her faith in God. Having given her life to God at an early age, you see, my mother, born into this dysfunctional home, actually read and is transcribed. She wrote the entire Bible by the time she was 12 years old. She and my late father raised my sister and I in this church, 6344 South Kimball. And I still call this church my only church home, where I am still and will ever be convinced that there is one Lord, one faith, and one baptism. And my sister and I marched in every Sunday with the choir singing, remember this song? We've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in His holy word. He's what? He's never failed me yet. So just to show you how finally my mother was really so special, she wrote me a letter. The letter was written in the voice of my dead father. It's in your book. My father had been dead for 25 years when she wrote this letter. I know what you're thinking, because I was thinking the same thing. Who does that? Who writes a letter to their son from their dead father who has been dead for over 2.5 decades? She called it Reflections in Shadows. Again, it's in your memorial booklet. You see this letter, for those who've already read it, you may seem that it was really about me. Not really. It's really telling us who she felt about herself. How many of us can bare our souls, reflect on who we are and what we become? I turn to it frequently as a reminder that I am who I am. And many of what I am has a source. You see, it was around 7 p.m. on Saturday, 7 years ago, that the phone started ringing. I picked it up and it was my mother's co-worker, Lee, in Lexington, Kentucky, where my mother was living at the time. And he said he was driving my mother to the emergency room. He put my mother on the phone and I could tell she was frightened. My mother was never scared. She told me her head was hurting so bad that she needed to get to a hospital. I said, okay, Mom, and asked her to call me and give me an update. Then around midnight, the phone started to ring. As Martin Luther King used to say, you can have some strange experiences at midnight. The doctor was on the other end, and he said my mother had a stroke, and I should get to Lexington, Kentucky as soon as possible. I got up, found a 5 a.m. flight. I booked it, got a seat. I kissed my wife, Claudia, who has been so near and dear to me. I went to see my mom. Well, the doctor said she's doing okay when I got there. But the nurse said, I don't think so. They called me again around midnight, when I was staying across the street from the hospital and said, your mother is going into emergency brain surgery. This was 7 years ago. And someone told me Alzheimer's is the long goodbye. And as I've seen a little of my mother's life leave her slowly but surely every week for 7 years, you know how I've gotten through this, and perhaps some of you have gone through the same thing. It's been 2 songs that I find myself humming all the time. You see, these songs are not on the Billboard chart. You won't hear them on the radio. Even churches seem to have put them in the archives. The first has a very simple message, but it's so powerful. It was already mentioned. In times like these, we need an anchor. Be very sure, so very sure your anchor holds and grips a solid rock. See, sometimes the problem is that we have anchors that are not gripping the solid rock. You see, one of the most powerful scriptures in the Bible that I recall was, I think it was the biggest trick question of our age. When Jesus was asked, are you the King of the Jews? It was a trick question. He knew it, but his answer was so brilliant, it's almost unconscionable. His first answer was, you said who I am. In other words, I understand you're trying to trick me. And as the dialogue I can hear it in my mind goes on, Jesus said, this kingdom, my kingdom is not of this world. See, some of us continue to be fooled in thinking that your kingdom is of this world. We can't get out of our own way. Jealousy, envy, we can't give it up. We are so busy about trying to collect so many assets that we don't understand that your kingdom is not of this world. My mother understood that very clearly. The second song has words so powerful for me that they don't get quite the depth of its meaning. The words go like this: on a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish that old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it one day for a crown. The last cross my mother and I, as her caregiver, had to cherish was Alzheimer's. And you say, cherish? How can you cherish a cross? How can you cherish Alzheimer's? Yes, because this song has reminded me that the only way to get your crown, see, many of us think that we can buy a crown. We can talk our way into a crown. We can finagle the crown. We can get a hookup. You can only get a crown if you give up your cross. So you must cherish those times. And yes, the story of Job reminds me that he knew that his kingdom wasn't of this world and he had to cherish his cross. So let me wrap this up before I get Helen my coattails pulled. You see, I sent a quick email to my co-workers, my colleagues at work who sent me so many cards, calls, and emails thanking them. I said back to them, the greatest gift that a mother or a father could ever give is simply this. You see, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I was loved. You see, someone always asks me, well, what is God? To me, God is love. So, as I end up, there's a saying that says, many are called, but few are chosen. Now, some of us don't understand the context of this. And again, the basic instructions before leaving Earth book says that there was a wedding. And at the wedding, see, when you paid for the Zanzibar hall and you got all the drinks lined up and all the band is playing, you got to fill that hall up. So the call went out for people to come into the hall. The interpretation of that story was that the Jews were the first to be called. But like many of us, they had a lot of excuses. I can't go there because I stayed out a little too late last night. I would love to go to Sunday school, but who's going to take care of the dog? My cat is sick and I couldn't go to choir rehearsal. So what happened in the story is that the call went out. He said, go to the street and see if other people would come in. And that interpretation is that those were the call to the Gentiles. And people came in and they noticed that there was one guy who wasn't dressed properly. I think the Bible, Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth book, says that he didn't have his wedding robe. See, sometimes we are not dressed right spiritually. See, we want to come into the party, but sometimes our attire. You know, I was at a meeting the other day and I saw a young man and he had that new hairstyle they got. Where the hair, they call it a natural style. It makes no difference to me how you want to wear your hair. We were criticized in our day for wearing our hair kind of goofy looking. But as my mother would say, when I looked at this young man's hair, she would probably say, at least he could get the lint out of it. There was another young man, he came in and his pants were down below his buttocks. Now, once again, it makes no difference to me where you establish the equator on your behind. You can have it low, medium, or high. But as my mother would say, if he's going to show me his underwear, at least he can keep it clean. See, many are called, but few are chosen. I was chosen before the foundation of the world to be my mother's only son. And as a songwriter once said, he lives. He lives. Now, I've changed the song a little bit because it says, you ask me how I know Virgie lives. Because love lives inside my soul. God bless you.